Hey guys, Danny Johnson here, and today we're going to be changing the front brakes on our Ford Edge. So please make sure you check a shop manual and other instructions in case I missed something. This is just showing you how I would do it. Make sure the parking brake has been applied and that the wheels are chocked. Next, I'm taking a 21mm socket, and it's good to break these loose on the ground because this rotational force can actually turn the wheel and push the car off the jack. So we're going to come in with our floor jack and our jack stand. We'll put the jack stand here at the back, and we were lifting right here where there was an exposed piece where that material's cut away for our floor jack. So go ahead and lift it up and make sure that it's secure. Give the car a good shake. And we're going to just break these loose again here. And if you do have an impact wrench, then use that to take the lug nuts off, and then we'll just remove the wheel. Now we're going to look at our brake caliper, and on the back there are these two little covers that we're going to pop off with a screwdriver. So just remove both of those. There's one on the top, and then there's also one at the bottom, and that will expose our hardware. So coming down on the bottom, we're going to do the same thing. Just get our screwdriver in here just to kind of pop this cap outward and remove it. And so the hardware for this is actually an 11mm Allen. So you might not have one of these. I'll put a link in the description where you can find them. And so that's how you'll be able to get these bolts off. And so we're going to go ahead with our 11mm Allen and remove these. And so you can use just a regular ratcheting wrench for that as well. And sometimes these are stuck in there. A pair of needle nose pliers has helped me get these out before, and so you just kind of grab them and pull them out. Now there's this clip here, and we're going to go ahead and remove it. So just get a pry bar and come in at the center and pry outward, and then with the screwdriver just pry slightly forward and up, and it will pop right out. So here I'll show it to you again, slow motion here, prying outward with the pry bar, and then slightly upward and forward, and it will pop this clip out. Now we're just taking a pry bar to break this caliper loose, and it's typical for the pad to stay in place. It's actually a little easier when it does on the outside. So we'll go ahead and walk this one off. And it's very important that you do not let this caliper hang by the brake line. So I like to use a 5-gallon bucket to set it on. Now we can remove this other caliper pad out of here. And on the other side, I had some trouble. I had to put a punch in here to really pop this, so they can get sticky, so keep that in mind. So again, make sure with the caliper that it's not hanging by this line and it's not twisting it either. Now we're going to take an 18mm socket, and we're going to remove these two bracket bolts. So this will hold the bracket on. If you're replacing the rotor, then these need to come out so that you can get that rotor past the bracket. So we'll just remove this bracket out of the way. Now for the brake disc, they can be on here pretty firm, and so you kind of got to beat them. You can put your lug nuts back on slightly so that they're not touching, and then really whack it with a hammer so it doesn't fall. But we are reusing our disc brakes, so I'm not going to do that. Next you'll put on some Loctite, some thread locker, and you'll put these 18mm bolts back on. And the torque spec I found for this was 80 foot-pounds, so double check that for your vehicle. And so we're just taking our 18mm socket and we're tightening these back down. Again, they had that thread locker on them, so just make sure that's on there so that they don't walk themselves back out. Next, we're going under the hood here, so we're just going to pull the hood latch, and we're going to remove the cap for the brake master cylinder. So this just twists off counterclockwise. We're going to set it out of the way, and that will allow the pressure to vent. Now, if you try to push these pistons back in one at a time, sometimes they go back and forth. So we're going to use our tool here and do them at the same time. So for this tool, and I have a link in the description of how to use this tool more and where to find it, we're going to put our first blocker in here that's going to go against the outside of the caliper. And now as we twist this in, it will spread and it will make contact with the brake pad. And I like to leave the old pads in. That way it will push these calipers in and push those pistons in at the same time a little bit more evenly. So we're just going ahead and tighten this tool down, and when you crank on it, it will just spread open. Now if you are going to reuse your pads for some reason, then you want to be careful not to mar them up. But this tool is really nice because it doesn't hurt the pad as well. So we just switched to the other side. It was compressing those pistons pretty evenly, but we went to the other side just to make sure that they're both flush. So now you can see that both of those pistons have been compressed back in. And remember, we have the cap off of our brake master cylinder, or you would not be able to push this back in, or it could damage the system. So now we're going to remove our tool and pop the pad back out. Okay, now these look flush and everything looks really good to go. So just another view on this. On the other side, you can see we're just tightening down and trying to do both at the same time, but the tool allows us to tighten down one side, then flip it over, and then tighten down the other, and they come out pretty flush that way. Now we can just remove the pad.
Okay.
Next, we're going to get some high temperature grease, and you want to be really careful that this does not touch the actual material where the brake pad will touch the rotor. So this is only going on some of these metal pieces on the back. Do not put them where the pad's going to touch the rotor. So we're just going to make sure that anywhere where metal will touch metal just has a little bit of lubrication here, and we can do it on the ends of the pads too. But as you can see, the pad itself is still clean, and we need it to be clean. So we're just going to go ahead and pop that one back in. Now we're going to move over to the other pad and put this on the corners where the metal is going to be touching the bracket. Okay, just a little bit because you don't want it coming off and getting on the rotor either. And then we're just putting it on the back side where it would make contact with other metal, just so that you don't get any squeaking. We're going to go ahead and line that pad back up and put it into place. It's really easy on this model. Other brakes are actually a lot harder than this. Then we're going to take our caliper, make sure we're not twisting the lines, and we're just going to swing it right back over and set it back on top. Now make sure that those pads are in those channels properly, and so once you get this in place, you want to double check and look everything over. So we're going to go ahead and line this back up. We're going to come in with, now as you can see, the pads are inside those channels. It's still going to be a little bit loose because we compress those pistons back in. So don't be alarmed if it's, they're kind of floating in there a little bit. But now we're going to take our hardware, and I put a little bit of Loctite on the tip of those as well. And so now we're going to line these back up to the caliper bracket. And with that rubber, they can be a little hard to kind of push in and line up. Make sure you're not cross-threading anything. And just take your time and get those in so that they're threading nice and evenly. And I like to go back and forth top to bottom. Don't tighten one down and then move on to the other one. Next, we'll put our caps back on and just pop them back into place. And then just look everything over and make sure that those pads are still sitting inside those channels. Again, they'll be loose until we pump the brakes.
Bring the new clip in and just make sure you're touching the very bottom of the caliper on the top and the bottom. And then just push on one end until it clicks into place. And then the other one, just apply pressure at the bottom until it pushes it up into that hole as well. And just make sure that you don't have this pop off and hit you in the face on removal or installation. Here's another view of this again. So make sure you're touching it here and here at the bottom of the caliper. And then you're just applying pressure upwards on each side one at a time until it pops into place. I'll show you.
Okay, look everything over again to make sure everything's in place and that the pads are the right way, and bring in your wheel. We'll go ahead and put this back on the vehicle. I like to hand thread these so that you don't cross thread them. If you do use an impact gun, make sure it's only just to speed it up, but don't tighten it down. And the torque rating I found was 162 foot-pounds. So double check that for your vehicle. That's a pretty high rating. And so you just want to make sure that that's right. And then we'll go ahead and tighten these all down and torque them in the star pattern, where you're going basically across every other lug nut from itself. Again, make sure that where this is like a front wheel all-wheel drive thing, you can potentially turn this so hard that the other wheel will roll and it can pull the car off the jack. So you might even want to lower the vehicle down so that the wheel is just barely touching the ground and has a little bit of grip on it, and then torque them down. Now we'll replace the cap to our brake master cylinder reservoir. Of course, you could repeat the same process for the other side of the vehicle. And then we would replace the brake master cylinder cap once it's all done. And then check your
Make sure you
fluid
didn't get
level
any air down
periodically.
the
Make
system
sure that
here.
it's at the right level, and as you're compressing the brakes, they'll be soft at first, then they'll start to firm up. So then remove your wheel chock and make sure that everything works. And this is why I like to do the front brakes first and test everything, and then the rears. If you do all your brakes at the same time, that might be a little worse in case something was wrong with one of them. So this way we should at least have our rear brakes if something were wrong, but everything came out really well. So please check the video description for the video for the rear brakes, and I also will put playlists to other videos that are similar to this. If you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. Thanks, guys.